Hello and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview, where we take a look at the stories being followed in the current edition of the North Coast Journal. I'm your host, Dave Frank. I'm joined this week by Iridian Casares, staff writer, and Jennifer Fumiko Cahill, arts and features editor at the North Coast Journal. Welcome, guys.
How you doing, Dave?
Pretty good. Iridian, welcome back. Thanks for joining us again today.
Thanks for having me again.
Right on. You've got a really cool cover story in this week's edition, so why don't we just dive right in? Why don't you tell us what it is and tell us how it got on your radar?
Yeah, so this week the story is basically a part 2 to my SB 1383 organic waste recycling that I wrote back in July. And so that bill, so it's California Senate Bill 1383, which basically mandates organic waste recycling and a food recovery program. So my story this week is really focused on the food recovery portion of that bill. And so just to give a little bit of background, so SB 1383 is a climate change law. And so it's basically trying to divert methane emissions from like rotting organic waste in landfills and kind of like diverting it before it gets there to like composting facilities and that kind of stuff. And the food recovery program, because there's a lot of edible food that goes into landfills and just kind of rots in there, it emits methane emissions, which are very, very harmful, more harmful than carbon dioxide. So I talk a little bit about how Humboldt County is going to kind of work together, how cities in Humboldt County are going to work together to try to implement a food recovery program, which is basically where grocery stores and wholesale food distributors and restaurants donate leftover, salvageable, edible food to local food pantries and shelters. So in Humboldt County's case, it would be like the Salvation Army, Arcata House Partnership, Food for People. That way, more food that's safe to eat gets to people who need it, people who might be food insecure and that kind of stuff. So I talk a little bit about that. And so basically, Humboldt Waste Management Authority hired Edgar and Associates, and they wrote the first compliance report, and they also wrote the food recovery plan. And they worked with Abound Food Care, which is a sub-consulting group, to kind of give Humboldt County like a guide to how they're going to do this. And so I talk a little bit about the guide and what Abound Food Care and Edgar and Associates tell the cities what they could be doing, and part of that is supporting the efforts that are already happening. So food recovery in Humboldt County is not a new concept. We have these great local food pantries who have been doing food recovery and food donation services for a really long time. Like there are several restaurants and grocery stores that are already donating food that they can't sell to these nonprofits. And so in the report and that guide, they kind of say that Humboldt County should just support the current efforts, through like funding or partnerships and that kind of stuff. To really create a robust food recovery network. And so this story is just kind of like basically the beginning of everything. It's just the start. And so Humboldt County cities and jurisdictions are like going to continue working together to try to create a regional approach so that everyone can do it all together and not just have it be like, something that one city does and another city is trying to figure it out.
Right on. There's a lot in there. This is really
There's
cool.
tons.
So yeah, I was going to say thank you so much for covering it and getting way into the details on this in your article. I definitely recommend people check it out because I think so like you said, we've heard a little bit about that it became the law. There is this mandate,
Yeah.
but then as they say, the devil's in the details, and it can be complicated for any one actor or set of actors to kind of
Yeah.
navigate. I think the mandate you said in the article was that 20% of edible food
Oh yeah.
that currently makes it into the landfill has to be recovered ahead of time and diverted. And that's like a couple different mandates, I guess is the right way to say it.
Yeah.
Different categories of people need to change their behavior, or organizations need to change their behavior.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that element of this plan.
Yeah, they have a goal. This bill has a goal to divert 20% of edible food from going into landfills to like people in need, to local food pantries and that kind of stuff. And so I want to just add in there that the consultants found they like estimated how much Humboldt County throws away, and it's a lot of food. It's more than half of what Food for People collects in a year, and so they're really trying to yeah, just make sure that there's more food um, being diverted so that we don't emit more methane pollution than we have to. And so yeah, so there's a lot of different factors to the whole bill, and so it's basically like the cities and jurisdictions, so like the unincorporated, there you go, unincorporated areas of Humboldt County have to really enforce this, and they have to make sure that like all of the restaurants and grocery stores that are in their jurisdictions are a part of this program and it's really a lot of enforcement. And so cities have to make sure that the restaurants are donating to the pantries, and there's a lot of recording that has to go on. There's like a lot of reports and auditing just to ensure that people are following it. And so there's like mandates from Cal Recycle too, and so it's just there's a lot of moving pieces, and they actually want to try to like make sure that people are doing it. So
And so there's this other piece of this, which is like, just kind of sort of following up on what you said, that there's reporting requirements, which means that there are going to be organizations out there that need some support. So I guess the consultant made some recommendations. Do you have any input on any of those sort of supports or recommendations that people can expect to hear about more in the future?
Yeah. So I think because Humboldt County's environmental health does a lot of like the inspections, like food inspections and that kind of stuff. I think right now, the Solid Waste Local Task Force, which is basically just like all the cities and unincorporated areas in Humboldt County, like in a group meeting, they're thinking that the Department of Environmental Health might be that point person to help with those kinds of inspections. So they recommended that the county really invest in like a reporting system that restaurants can use to say, hey, I donated to Food for People and Arcata House, and this is how much I donated. This is what it was. And then Food for People and Arcata House can report back and say, yes, we received XYZ donations from them, so that it's all kind of organized and in one system. They also recommended classes to educate people on the types of food that they can donate. So there's a little bit of worry there about like, hey, we don't want anyone to get sick from the donations that we're giving them. So what kind of food can you actually donate?
It's so fascinating to me because this issue, like this bill, and hopefully what it does for us, touches so many areas in Humboldt County where we have deep, deep need. And, especially when it comes to food insecurity, the environmental aspect is fantastic, but also the food insecurity part affects everything from education, health. There's a million things like, the stress on a child who is not eating enough, like it's incredible. And then how that affects the rest of their life and their health overall. It touches so many things. And I was thinking back early on when you were talking about the food handling or the way, what can and can't be, given away. I was thinking back to the blackouts. Remember when the blackouts were like the worst thing that ever happened to us? So
Oh, child.
Right. Yes.
I remember when, because of refrigeration and the refrigeration shutting down, I think it was the co-op that had to throw out a lot of food, and it was stuff like dairy, like stuff that was going to go bad quickly if it wasn't kept to temperature. And all these people were enraged and like trying to pull open the locked truck that things were in, and like the dumpster, and they were yelling at employees and saying like, you're throwing away this food and people are starving. But it's like, well, this could make people sick. And there was a real gap in understanding what you can, both legally and in terms of health and safety, give away, and what's helpful and what's going to do more harm. So yeah, I'm excited about Iridion's story and where this could go from here.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that this is a climate change law, but like it's also going to have a really big impact in like social services and like local nonprofits and food pantries and people who are just in need, which I think is incredible, because Humboldt County definitely has, I think our food insecure rate is like 18%, and that's like much higher than the 12% average. And like California has a really serious homelessness problem. And so it's definitely going to help kind of, make sure that food that's not being eaten is actually eaten,
and my grandmother can stop spinning in her grave.
Yes, exactly.
Watching food being thrown out. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
So one last piece on this, which I think is pretty interesting, is that there's when people hear about regulation, they hear like, oh, well, now the government is telling us what to do, whether if you're like small business owners, for example, that fall, or large business owners that fall under this bill. And there is, to a certain extent, there's a punishment mechanism for people that nope out. I think the fines aren't particularly large, but they're large enough that to get people's attention. But the flip side of this is that it's an opportunity for integration within a bunch of different elements of the community. And Iridian, one of the things that you pointed out is that because Recology, the waste management firm, has a seat at the table and I would argue, an outsized role here in terms of compliance. They're actually involved in sort of some of the hammer side of it. They also, in your article, it says they want to be part of the solution. And hopefully I can trigger your recollection of this, but one of their representatives mentioned a really creative solution, which is teaming up with another part of the government, the Fish and Game, or the Fish and Wildlife Department. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so part of the recommendations, was trying to find funding to support a food recovery network, because it's going to take a lot to really support this. And so Abound Food Care and Edgar and Associates, the consultants, kind of recommended finding alternative ways of funding and consistent funding. And so I think it was Frank Nelson who said that Linda Wise at Recology was talking to some people, and she heard that Mendocino County had used Fish and Game like grant money to build refrigeration space. And so she thought, because maybe our fisheries here in Humboldt County might need some refrigeration soon, that they can possibly get some grant funding to build those spaces here at the same time as the Food Recovery Network is going to need like refrigeration space. So it's like those kinds of creative funding mechanisms that they were talking about. And I think it's pretty interesting because there's also like Department of Urban Housing Development grants that support building new shelters and that kind of stuff. And maybe those shelters can build a big enough kitchen where they can house or where it can have food, right? And so it's just those kinds of like creative ways of funding that was mentioned.
So this is an opportunity.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts on on what you covered or the opportunities we have ahead of us before we wrap up?
Yeah, no, just that this is just the beginning, and I am hoping to see it all through. And there's a lot more to come within food recovery and organic waste recycling. Yeah.
Well, right on. Thank you, Iridian. It was great chatting with you today on this, and look forward to hearing more, because the mandate is, I guess, by 2025 we've got to really make some serious progress. So we have a couple years to dial it in.
Yeah.
Excellent. How about you, Jen? What is going on the Arts and Features beat this week?
It is a busy time in art. Remember when we were missing all these gallery exhibitions, things were closed, it was all very sad. I feel like we're just about back in full swing in terms of exhibitions. We lost some galleries, we gained a couple, but right now, L.L. Kessner has written about, in the Art Beat column this week, has written about a really cool show that's happening at the Goudini Gallery at CPH, Cal Poly Humboldt, formerly HSU. I'm working on it. It'll become natural eventually. Yeah. Anyway, the show is called Recalling from the Source, and it's actually kind of a comeback. There was a 1980s kind of annual Recalling from the Source show that was happening. Brian Tripp was one of the main people who was involved. Brian Tripp, who passed away last spring. But it was a kind of a continuing annual show of Native art. And this show is a revival of that at the gallery at CPH that's meant to be for Native American art. And anytime you're over, by the way, anytime you're over at the campus, like you already paid for parking. So you might as well swing into the Goudini and Reese-Bullen galleries and check them out, because, you know, what you're going to just let that last 15 minutes fall away for free. So go in and check out the galleries. They always have something cool happening. Sometimes it's faculty stuff, sometimes not. Sometimes it's from, you know, touring the country. But this show, Brittany Britton is the director of the Goudini Gallery, and she's kind of fascinating on her own. Go check her name in our search bar on the site, and you will find all kinds of cool stuff. She was formerly in charge of the curation, I think, at the Clark Museum when she was handling all the baskets and all the native materials. And she makes her own really fascinating art too. But she really wanted this to be like a snapshot of the community, not necessarily just a greatest hits. Although there are some heavy hitters in here, like Julian Lang, whose work you can see all over the county, including in mural form. And he talked about his process, which was really interesting. Sometimes he starts with a planned, you know, narrative, figurative image, and sometimes he throws a little paint on the canvas and lets it lead him. Just kind of Rorschachs the response and then starts going, which is really fascinating. There's Lynn Risling is in there. There's a bunch of people whose work you've seen around the county and really speaks to particularly the local motifs from like basketry and animal motifs and kind of like regalia and things like that show up. You'll see, you know, representations of, you know, Wiyot, Karuk. You'll see all those cultures coming into the work. And some people who are very new, including, I got to get over there and see this. Charlena Valencia did a big portrait of Tony Soprano. And she had just taken beginning painting last semester. Like, it's a broad range. You know, we have an idea of, you know, what should be in a gallery, and we have frequently an idea about what Native art should look like. But as with anything, anytime we talk about like Latinx art, we talk about like, you know, Asian art, if we talk about even the art of a given time period, right? The range is always broader than you expect. And it's kind of great to see, in particular, a showcase for people who are up and coming, for people who, you know, you think to yourself like, well, how do you get to be Julian Lang, right? How do you get to be Brian Tripp? How do you get to be Lynn Risling? Okay, some of it is like genius, but some of it is about encouragement and, you know, really nurturing artists. And so this show is a way to both showcase some of the local icons of art by Native people and also to, you know, present some new voices and doing some new stuff, like a giant portrait of Tony Soprano.
It's pretty neat. I think in LL's article, one of Lang's quotes that I really liked was
Mm-hmm.
he said, our belief says we're descended from a creative spirit. We all
Mm-hmm.
hold secrets that we don't even know exist, and art is the way to access those secrets. And that's, in his role as a teacher, he's trying to teach people. He's trying to let the community know that you should go out and express yourself and sort of tap into that. It's good for you and it's good for us.
Yeah, I do like the idea of, all of us being like my hair, full of secrets. And I think that that little bit of mystery in art can get lost. We spend a lot of time talking about art as a commodity, art as, potential NFTs, et cetera. But to talk about the thing that you can't quite explain, the thing that is the impetus and the kind of ineffable magic of art it's lovely. And it's lovely to see in a gallery. So you stop by there.
So just full disclosure, I was recently at an event on campus, and I walked through one of the galleries that I didn't even know existed. One of my friends was a student and said, former student, and said, check this out. And there's like a hall, like all these hallways all over the place, decorated with art everywhere, and it's actually a really cool experience. And it's not something that really people talk about very much. So I'm glad that you guys have, you personally, but also LL are pointing it out to remind us. Go check it out.
Yeah, listen to LL. Go to the gallery.
So I know we just have a few minutes left. Anything else you want to tease from the Arts and Features Beat this week before we wrap?
I do. If you have a chance, well, first of all, you should go online. And today, while we're recording, is one of the Dia de los Muertos. And we are on our site, we have a really great slideshow from Mark Larson with photos of the October 30th celebration in Arcata. And it's just fantastic. There's like folklorico dancing, there's Aztec dancers, there's all kinds of marching and puppetry, and it's very cool. So go check that out and enjoy that. And then also more Mark Larson than you can shake a Mark Larson at. He has a wonderful Get Out story this week about brown pelicans. And now and then you see the pelicans, over in the marsh and whatnot. And I don't know if you've ever seen them smash into the water, but they full on smash into the water. It looks like, oh my God, is it dying? But it's fishing. And he talks about kind of the physics of that. And he also includes a really great poem or a limerick. Is it? I don't know. Is it a limerick? It's a limerick, which is by C.M. Marston that I'm going to read to you now because we are nothing if not cultured.
Right on.
A gorgeous bird is the pelican, whose beak will hold more than his belly can. He can put in his beak food enough for a week, but I'm damned if I see how the pelican.
I love it.
Right?
Great one.
Good times.
Yeah.
So go check that out. And I think there are more pictures online of this pelican just careening into the water. And he explains how they're built to absorb the impact, scoop up the fish, dump the water, and eat.
This is pretty cool.
It's wild.
Little did we know when we got on this call, on this meeting today. I'm going to check that out, definitely.
Yeah, and then the next time you see a pelican in the sky, watch, because it might do something crazy.
Like smash into the water.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Thank you both, Iridion and Jen. This was really fun today and informative. So I'm glad we had the opportunity to connect and touch base.
Good to see you.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks to everybody out there. North Coast Journal is available on newsstands now. Pick one up, stay informed. Also available online 24/7, so you can check them out anytime. Iridion, Jen, take care till next time. Everybody out there, take care till next time. And we'll check back in again next week. Bye, guys.